Thanks for staying with us. You're welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Well, West African Regional Bloc, ECOWAS, appears to be reeling from this week's notice of withdrawal served the Union by 3 foundational members, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger Republic. This development is being interpreted in many quarters as the final materialization of pent-up emotions generated by regional leaders a few months ago, who at some point contemplated physical military invasion of Niger Republic in the wake of a military coup there. We're now being joined for a conversation around all of that, especially Nigeria's expected role in the efforts to resolve the impasse, by Professor Adele Jinadu, who is a professor of political science, non-resident senior fellow at Center for Democracy and Development, and a former Director General of Administrative Staff College of Nigeria. Good morning, Prof. Good to have you join us on the morning show today.
Good morning, Steve.
Good morning, Prof.
How are you? Nice to join you. How are you? Good morning.
We're doing very well here. Thank you so much. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning.
All right, let's talk ECOWAS, Prof.
My pleasure, always. My pleasure.
All right, sir. So let's talk ECOWAS. And in talking ECOWAS, let's talk about how the exit of the 3 countries, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, how the exit will affect, on the one hand, the leadership of Nigeria as the chair of ECOWAS at this time, and on the other hand, which is also related to it, how can it possibly affect Nigeria as a country, given the proximity that we share in terms of a border and everything with Niger Republic, given the fact that things had really gone south between the 2 countries because of the coup, and now that they have exited, where do you think Nigeria should stand, and what will be your keywords to the president at this time?
Well, I think that the matter is one that goes beyond what Nigeria can or should do. I think what has happened in the past few months has been a failure of diplomacy, a failure of political leadership, particularly at the level of the ECOWAS Commission, in handling the affairs of what happened in Niger Republic. I think the initial law and order response was a huge misstep. And I think they need to retrace their steps, which they have already done, and resort to diplomacy. But diplomacy has apparently not worked. For what reasons, I really don't know. But I think it has to be diplomacy in the broader context of the regional and international power blocks that are involved in the struggle, not only in Niger, but in the Sahel generally, and in West Africa also. So I think it's a multifaceted problem. And Nigeria's leadership role will be to sit back, reassess the situation. What are the various forces involved in what is happening in West Africa generally, of which the exit of the 3 countries is simply a symptom. There are more fundamental issues at stake. And you cannot solve this particular one without linking it to what are the other sources of conflict in the sub-region. So I think we need, really, our Ministry of Foreign Affairs has a very, very important role to play in this. Unfortunately, the NIA has not been given the proper role it should be playing as a think tank to rethink our strategy, not only in ECOWAS, but in the world generally, in terms of reacting to what is happening. Instead of being reactive, we should be proactive, anticipate events, do a kind of a scenario of risks and opportunities that we can now use to formulate our policy. So my reply my advice to ECOWAS leadership generally is for them to be less emotional about this, to be less focused on their egos, and realize that we are in a situation where we are now. We are in this difficult situation, and what do we need to revive it? And doing that, they must also know, they must also keep in mind the fact that
All right.
I think we've lost him. We're going to go on a short break. After this, we'll try and reconnect with Professor
his position.
Jinadu. Okay, he's still here.
So
can
it's
you
part
hear us,
of
sir?
His decisions.
Okay.
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, please go ahead.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we
Yes,
can.
go ahead.
Please
So
go ahead, sir.
the point I'm simply making is that ECOWAS must move from a position of realizing its impotence in enforcing its decisions and rely more and more on diplomacy, but working with other regional bodies in Africa, like the African Union, and with some of the powerful outside forces that are involved in the crisis. So there may be a need for some kind of a meeting of all the parties involved to really map the way forward. But I think the initial misstep of taking a law and order attitude towards it it was a wrong one. And we are seeing the reverberations now.
Okay, thank you so much, Professor Jinadu, for setting the tone of this conversation. Well, the military leaders of Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger Republic cited a lack of support from ECOWAS in the fight against terrorism as a reason for their withdrawal. Now, the historical ties of the former colonies, particularly with France, have been a significant aspect of this schism. How intertwined are these issues of political stability and the fight against terrorism in the current West African context? And how might this continue to impact the region's security?
Well, I agree with you, and that is my whole point, that we need to sit back. Our foreign ministry needs to sit back and look at the situation, have a major overhaul of what its policy should be. It's a pity because Nigeria has invested a lot in ECOWAS, right from the founding of ECOWAS, in resolving conflicts in ECOWAS. But we're at a stage now where we ourselves are involved in serious internal insurrection, trying to pull down internal insurrection, the Boko Haram, kidnapping, all those security challenges that we are facing. And our economy is in a very, very terrible shape now, that we may not be able to shoulder the international responsibilities that we were able to shoulder when we played very active role in resolving crises in Sierra Leone, in Liberia, and I think so that is the major issue that is involved here. So there must be some kind of an international conference, international meeting of all the powers involved. ECOWAS, AU, the UN, European Union, and so on, because they are very, very powerful forces at work. And this is a situation where internal crisis more or less dovetail into international crisis. Since the war on terror began, we could see that old pattern of and African countries are weak internally and externally, and that is part of the problem. The French role in West Africa since independence has been one of not being a positive one generally, and I think it's a pity in this respect. I think that the impression that is being placed in other places outside of Africa and even in the world generally is the particular influence of France, the growing influence of France, political, economic, cultural, within Nigeria itself. So making us a non-partisan, African-centered interlocutor becomes very, very difficult. Because you remember some years back, there was a move within Nigeria to make French is the second lingua franca of the country, and requiring our civil servants